So today we are going to be talking about aligning your assessments to your state test wherever you are, um, and how to do that year round. So kind of a look at what we're going to go through. We're going to start with a basic introduction into Edcite and who we are and why we're even talking about this. We'll talk about how you align your assessments. We'll talk about tech-enhanced items, tools and accommodations, and that general navigation. Then we'll move on to some resources that you can start to use immediately and talk a little bit about how to use Edcite. I see a question in the chat saying that someone can't hear, so I'll just ask the Edcite team to follow up. Okay, awesome. Looks like they're good to go. Okay, so general introduction. So Edcite is an assessments and analytics company. And we do what we do because we want to positively impact students. The way in which we want to positively impact students is really grounded in this deep belief that feedback drives growth, that when you know more, you can do more, you can do better. When you know better, you do better. And so the ways that we approach the products and services that we provide to schools and districts is that we want to provide aligned assessment tools or really robust ways to measure student understanding, and we want to provide actionable data. And so this is just a quick breakdown of what Edcite does. But as you can imagine, because we're supporting teams with aligned assessments and actionable data, the idea of how do you align your assessments to the state expectation is a really big piece of what we do. And so definitely we can continue the conversation outside of this webinar if you'd like to learn about our assessment platforms, if you want to talk about professional development, content services, or some of the data services side of things. Okay, but let's talk about how you, joining today's webinar, can go back to your team and align assessments to the state test. So we're going to kind of talk through today using this model of, okay, if I am aligning my assessments year round to the state test, the first place I really need to start is with the state test information being put out by the state. So if I'm in Ohio, if I'm in Texas, New York, Massachusetts, wherever your school is, or if you're a network that spans multiple states, looking at each of those specific states, but looking at the information that they put out is the best place to start your alignment vision and conversation. And that's always where we as a company start. We want to look at what the state is telling all of us is going to be on those state tests. And from there, we start to look at how can we align the technology and how can we align the content. And then underneath each of those falls out this conversation around item types, tools, navigation. And then when we think about content, we're thinking about, okay, what skills, what standards, what is the scoring guidance, what are the exemplar responses, what should good answers look like? And then looking at, passages, videos, what's the length, what's the lexile. So there's a lot of information that you can incorporate when building an aligned assessment vision for your team. I want to first just start out with, where do you get this state test information? Where do we get our information? So state test information, we always start with a simple look at the state's Department of Ed and what they are sharing. So in this example, this is looking at some of the blueprints and standards information put out from California in preparation for their Smarter Balanced assessments. You can see that in the screenshot on the right, it's giving you an idea of, what is going to be the breakdown between literary texts versus informational texts, And within each of those, how many items can we anticipate on the different depth of knowledge levels? Looking at, are these machine scored? Are these short answer? So being able to look to the blueprints can really make sure that you are covering the appropriate question types and content. I'm just going to run through a few examples to ground us from various states. And this might seem like a simple slide, but I think it's helpful just to know, how do I even find this material from the states? It's as simple as, I always just start with Google. Like if I were looking for information on the OST in Ohio, simple Google search for Ohio State Test, your top result is going to be the Ohio Department of Education. And there is no source that will be better for driving your alignment. Nothing will be better than the actual state website. So this is just an example of, just go to your browser, search for your state test, and typically your state's website is going to be the top result. And then you'll see on the picture on the right, it's got information whether I'm looking for, OWELPA or that English language proficiency assessment, looking for my blueprints for different subject areas and grade levels, or if I'm looking for released sample items. The same thing in Alabama. This is a quick screen grab of, a blueprint for grades 2 through 8 for math. Just kind of looking at, okay, for each of the reporting categories, the standards, how many points should I anticipate on that end of year state test? And so it's helpful to know where the emphasis is going to be, to make sure that you're really covering those. If the state has indicated, these are really essential skills for readiness for my next grade level, then you want to make sure that your students are really comfortable with those skills, not just so they can show what they know at the end of your state test, but because that has been identified as an essential skill by your state in terms of success later on down the road. So these are just some examples from Alabama that has, the blueprints, as well as a screen grab from some of those released items. And just kind of same thing, Massachusetts has it. And this is really just to drive home the idea that your state has this information ready to go. If I'm looking at New York, the same thing. They've got their question samplers. Okay, so let's kind of pull one up to live show you. Let's pull this up. So this would be an example from Texas, where you can actually see all of the tested grade levels. You can see what the test questions look like, and you can see at the end what that report is going to look like. And I'll also just pull up, let's go with this New York example. So you can see even one of these PDFs. So in here, you've got all of the material, even down to, let's look at our question formats, even down to how are the questions going to be formatted. So that really drives home this idea that the best place to start in terms of alignment is with the state's information. And so once you've got a solid understanding of, okay, I know we're going to be assessed heavily on these skills and standards. I know that the item types are going to include the following items. And I know that they are going to be scored on 2-point rubrics. So once you know what the state expects, then it gets into, how do I make sure I'm developing aligned assessments and assignments year round based on the technology and the content. So while we definitely can support you with both the technology side and the content side, today we're going to primarily focus on this technology piece. But I do just want to call out that the content side, Edcite does have a lot of ready-to-go materials, and you are also able to build your own materials. We also have content partners with different publishing companies and content organizations if you are looking for interim or benchmark assessments from a closed source to be able to deliver in our state-aligned technology. So let's talk about the tech side. So first, let's talk item types. So there are, nuances across the country based on your specific state. This can be really relevant for networks that have schools across multiple states. So understanding that nuance is really important. Edcite allows you to deliver your materials with the look and feel of your state test. You can push out a common assessment, but set it to mirror the state of the student taking the test. So if you do span multiple states, don't worry, you don't have to make 9, 10 copies of the same test. You make one version and just turn on what's called State Viewer, and that's going to provide that dynamic localized experience for students. But common item types across all state tests, multiple choice, even as we transition to computers, multiple choice is still a big piece of assessments today. And so we see multiple choice showing up in a few different ways. There's the most simple form, which is a single select multiple choice. There is a multi-select question type. And then a lot of times we see what's called a Part A, Part B, where sometimes there's this dependency where if I do not get credit for Part A, I can't get credit for Part B. And so that's important to look at and make sure when you are giving assessments that are meant to mirror the state test, that you're building those Part A, Part B questions with the appropriate dependency. So on Edcite, there's a button to turn on that conditional scoring. So that way, if Part A is asking a student, what is the theme of the story? And Part B is asking for evidence to support that. They're not getting the theme wrong, but still getting credit for some evidence in Part B. So that dependency is important. One, just to make sure students are getting appropriate feedback on how they're doing with questions, but also two, so you can start to have a more accurate picture of students' understanding of theme or the different skills you're assessing. And there's also, the keypad, keyboard, calculator, that question type. There's a select text and hotspot. There's a checkbox, and then I put in here insert common name because there are, and I just want to acknowledge, 1,000 different ways people talk about these item types. So, some people might call it a table grid. Some people might call it just a table question type. There's a lot of different phrasing sometimes around question types. We often call them by the most literal meaning. So select text versus hotspot, and a checkbox versus, a table grid. But there are just common item types around graphing. You've got drop downs, you've got inline text entry, and for those English language proficiency assessments, the record audio. So let's take a look at what some of these item types look like. And all of these item types are available on Edcite, so you can find existing materials to build into your assignments and assessments or to build your own year-round. So this would be an example from, this would be similar to an OELPA. So it's got that record audio where students simply click on that record button, speak their answer, and the teacher is able to listen back on the grading page and score that response on a rubric. This would be an example of just a general free response where students are entering the question. This would be an MCAS style viewer. This is an example in, I believe this is the Ohio viewer. This would be more similar to states that are using Cambium or used to be called AIR. This also has a similar look and feel to SBAC. And so this would be a drag and drop question. So drag and drop does show up a lot on these new assessments nationwide. And so making sure students know, have that tech skill to drag and drop items to the appropriate place. This is another example of a drag and drop. And depending on which state you're in, the ways that drag and drops are formatted may change. This would be similar to one of the park states, so aligned more towards that if you are giving one of those park state tests at the end of the year. This would be an example from New York. Again, we've got some open responses. And what's nice about these slides is it's also giving you an idea that the shell in which assessments appear is adjusted to make sure it aligns with your state. So you'll notice I might be in Colorado taking a test that looks and feels like this. The same exact question could be delivered to a New York school with the look and feel that's going to better mirror their CBT computer-based testing. This would be an example of some this is select text, excuse me, or hotspot, or hot text. This would be similar to, this would be a released NJSLA on Edcite. So this is just another question type where students are selecting the answers. And then you have a range of math question types. So you've got keypads. This would be similar to some of those Cambium states or SBAC states where they've got a kind of a wider keypad entry tool. Some of the park states typically use a bit of a shorter keypad, you'll notice. And then there's always basic text entry. So whether that's numeric, whether that is Word, you've got a shorter, smaller box where students are entering something in. So that was a quick look at the item types, and we can answer questions on specific item types at the end. But I want to transition us over to the tools. So we want to make sure that you are aligning your assignments and assessments year-round and offering the appropriate universal tools as well as specific accommodations. So when we're talking about universal tools, we're talking about a lot of times the highlighters, the zoom tools. For some states, your text-to-speech is going to be considered a universal tool for math, science, and social studies. If you are delivering an ELA assessment, sometimes it becomes accommodation-based. Students have to have an IEP, and maybe they're only having the questions and directions available for text-to-speech, but not the passage itself. And so it's important to make sure that students know, one, where these tools are, and two, how to actually use them. So these are just a few screenshots of the tools available in some of our different state look and feels, just to give you an idea that we have all of the tools available, and then students can become familiar with them. The only tool that does not appear on a state test that Edcite does offer is this attach work function. And this is so students can click that paper clip and it's going to just pop open their webcam so they can hold up a picture of their scratch work. So teachers can always go back to that written student thinking if they want to. But we'll just kind of go through a few of these viewers here. You can see the highlighter tools appear in different places based on which state you are in. So getting familiar with where those tools are, where the magnifier is. In this example, the magnifier is in that menu in the top right corner. So making sure students know to click in there and enable the magnifier. Making sure students feel comfortable with text-to-speech. So for some of our states, we're seeing that there is a drop-down where students have to select speak question or speak text. And so making sure students are familiar with the tools and accommodations, so ultimately they're able to use them at the end of the year. And then finally, I want to talk with us about the general navigation and how to navigate through the assessments. I'm going to pop out here real quick. And these ones are, oh yeah, we'll keep going here. These ones are going to just highlight for each viewer the general navigation buttons. So yeah, making sure students know, how do I review my items? How do I navigate to the next question? What does flagging a question look like? And so just, again, building that familiarity with how do I interact with this assessment platform. By using an aligned platform year round, students then feel more comfortable and ready to show what they know at the end of the year. And so all of that really is grounded in this idea that, we don't want to align assessments to the state test just for, the sake of alignment. We're doing it because it has an impact on how students show what they know. And we know that what students show at those end of year state assessments can have really big impacts on them and their educational career, whether you're in a state that has maybe a higher stakes third grade reading assessment, or maybe you're at a school that those state tests are going to have a really big impact on your upcoming school year. The results of these state tests do have impacts. And we want to make sure that if your students are doing such great learning year round, it's a shame to then get to the state test and have the barrier to showing all of that great learning be the technology. And there is a lot out there where you can see that there is an online penalty, as Edutopia says in this article, if you don't know how to use online tests. If you're not familiar with those, you're not at the same, it's not a level playing field when we're looking at how students that are familiar with that technology, how everyone's going to perform. So we want to make sure that we're providing students with an equal playing field when it comes to the end of year state test. And part of doing that is making sure that kids know how to use those item types, know how to navigate the platform, know how to access their text to speech. And that's why with Edcite, we want to make sure that you have all of those tools. So Edcite has a free teacher platform, and you can get started with your team immediately. So teachers can go on there, they can find ready to go materials, they can build their own questions, and they can send them to their students. This is a great assessment initiative that's also part of our free platform, which is going to give you aligned or released state tests in the look and feel of your state. So if I am in Massachusetts, and let's say I want to find some released MCAS assessments, and I want to have Edcite's premium state look and feel, I can open up from this website and see it's got that premium MCAS look and feel. All of the tools that we talked about are here. The navigation mirrors that student experience. If I wanted to look at let's look at the LEAP, which would be the Louisiana one. ACAP, you also have lots of content on here, so I can pull that up next. And so I could pull up maybe the LEAP 2025. You'll see it has a different look and feel, but is mirroring what's going to be on that end of year state assessment. So you have resources here that you can then just click into and then check out what materials are here. So here we've got ACAP assessments as well. So you can find those ready to go premium look and feel assessments, or sign up for free on edcite.com to just go ahead and make your own materials, or use something from our item bank of more than 300,000 items. If you are looking for an option for your entire school or for your team, your district, your network, it's going to be through our Edcite Schools platform. So our Edcite Schools platform is our premium assessment platform, which allows you to really roll out Edcite as a team. You can give common assessments. Everything you deliver is going to have that premium. This one says New York State, but it's really any state. So it's going to mirror your state look and feel for anything that you deliver, whether it's an exit ticket or a network-wide benchmark or, a unit test. So making sure that you're able to give assessments as a team for anything that you're doing in a computer-based environment, an online format, that it's got the alignment, whether it's tools, accommodations, question types. And with this Edcite Schools version, you also get administrator level access to data. So you can be looking at performance across your classes, across your campuses. And you also just have more data for teachers, item analysis, growth reports, student standards over time. So this is, I think, a good piece if you are looking to roll it out at scale across multiple teams. The other premium product that we offer is called Data Hub. This is a centralized data system, so you can bring in not just the materials you're delivering on Edcite, but also bring in those state test materials from the state. Visualize, how students did on the state test and maybe correlate that with attendance, or maybe you want to monitor attendance because we know chronic absenteeism is such a problem right now throughout the country. So Data Hub allows you to bring in all of the different data pieces into one single system, and try to show the whole view of what's happening at your school, at your district, or for each individual student. So we are just at time, but if you have any technical questions, please feel free to reach out to support@edcite.com. And if you are interested in learning more about our Edcite Schools platform or Data Hub, please reach out to schools@edcite.com, and we would love to connect with you.